Hello, welcome to Cooking for COVID. A few weeks back, one of my students sent me a copy of this recipe, and I was intrigued by it, and I thought I'd like to make it. Well, my wife suggested I make it on camera so you guys can see, and then if you want to make it, you've got a demonstration. It comes from the Food Network, so I know it's a good recipe. Here it is. It's called Chocoflan. I'll put the URL up so you can access it if you'd like to follow the recipe. Anyway, we're going to start with, I already washed my hands just before we started filming. We're going to, step one says put an oven rack in the middle of the oven and preheat to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's always a good idea, where'd you go? I know you're back there somewhere, I can hear you. It's always a good idea to put your oven rack where you want it to be while it's cool so you don't burn yourself. I'd say that's about the middle of the oven. Let's do that one because we've got double pans we're going to use. So I'm going to put 350 on the dial, turn that to bake, so that will preheat while we're getting our ingredients together. Step two. Coat a bundt pan with a little butter, then coat the bottom with a 1/4 cup of cajeta, and put in a large roasting pan. Alrighty, over here I have my bundt pan, and I'm not going to coat it with butter because that's messy. I don't really like to do that. I'm going to use some non-stick cooking spray. I like to use the grilling formula, not because I'm grilling, but because this is the only one that does not contain, I forgot what it's called, does not contain lecithin. Lecithin is an emulsifier, and I'm not sure why they need to add it to spray oil, but it builds up on your pans. I don't know if you can see that or not, but that's a buildup, and when it bakes on, it's hard to clean off. So I use grilling because it contains no lecithin. Pay no attention to my dog. He's a little crazy. So I'm going to spray the inside tube as well as the whole pan with my non-stick cooking spray. Now I'm going to use a 1/4 cup of cajeta. I got this at Vallarta in the service deli. I'm just going to pour this in my bundt pan. Now I'm using a dry measuring cup because this stuff is so thick, it sticks to the side. It would be hard to use on a liquid measuring cup. Oh, but let's do this. To make that easy to clean up, let's give that a quick spray. You'll see later how that comes in handy. I know, it's taking forever. Don't go watching Minecraft while I do this. I'll be done in just a second. Or maybe we'll edit it out. Depends on whether or not I can figure out how to use editing software. Alright, there we go. And I'm going to use my rubber spatula here to make sure we have a 1/4 cup. And I'm going to put it in the bottom of my bundt pan and see how easily that came out of my measuring cup. I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but this is the first time I'm trying this, so if it comes out as a disaster, you probably won't see this video. Alright, so spread that out just a little bit. I'm going to use another rubber spatula to get the cajeta off with the first rubber spatula. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Cajeta. Set that aside for now. Next, we put this in a large roasting pan. What we're going to do is we're going to put a water bath around the bundt pan. And the reason for that is because we're going to cook some eggs in the oven. and eggs are very delicate. We don't want to get them to get too hot. So just like if we were making custards, we would put this in a water bath. Okay, now we're going to work on our cake. So I'm going to set this aside for the time being. Step 3 says for the cake, add butter and sugar. So we need butter. Now my butter's been sitting out at room temperature already. We need 10 tablespoons of butter. Well, I don't know if you guys remember, but 1 stick of butter is a half a cup. 1 cup equals 16 tablespoons. So 1 stick is half a cup, or half of 16, or 8 tablespoons. So that right there is 8 tablespoons of butter. But I need 2 more tablespoons to give me a total of 8 tablespoons of butter. So we can use the lines on this to measure out tablespoons, but you can see they're off a little bit. That's okay, as long as we're close. So this would be approximately, let me start from this end, be approximately 2 tablespoons of butter. Grab a paper towel here to wipe my hands. Alrighty, you guys know how to use these mixers, just like the ones we have at school. The difference is mine's got a rubber blade, so that the idea is that it scrapes the side of the bowl, makes incorporating ingredients a little bit easier. I'm not so sure it works that way, but that's the theory anyway. All right, and we're going to also put sugar in there. The amount of sugar we need is 1 cup. Behind my cameraman here, I have the dry measuring cups. And we're going to cream these together. Now, creaming together is a process where you mix butter and sugar, or any kind of fat, excuse me, any fat and sugar, which could be oil, could be shortening, could be margarine, could be lard. We're going to mix them together until they're light and fluffy. And it works a little bit better if your butter is already at room temperature. Okay, take a look at our butter and sugar, which have been creamed together until light and fluffy. Basically, you're making sure that all the sugar granules are coated in butter. And it's a good idea to scrape the sides of the bowl in case there's clumps of butter that haven't been mixed in, which were good. Our next step, still on step number 3, is beat in the egg. Now, sometimes it's a good idea to crack your egg in another container. That way, if any shell goes in there, it's easy to retrieve. But even more important than that, you don't want to crack your egg into your mixer while it's mixing, because if you drop any shell in there, and you will drop shell in there, you can't retrieve it at all. So it's up to you if you want to crack it and drop it in there, or crack it in a separate container. But please make sure your mixer is off before you do that. And there's no shell in my egg, so I'm good. My egg, too, is at room temperature, and I forgot the reason for that. But they often tell you make sure your eggs are at room temperature before mixing them in. All right, so there's our egg after it's been mixed in. We did a little research and we found out the reason we make sure the egg is at room temperature is because if it's cold, when that cold egg hits the butter, it could cause the butter to clump up, and then we'd have to remix it. So this way, this doesn't happen. But I am going to scrape down my bowl a little bit and my mixing blade because there are some places here where the egg has not been incorporated. All right, our next step is for our dry ingredients. We are going to sift together, and this is a sifter. You guys have seen these in class. We're going to sift together 1 3/4 cups of flour, which I didn't get my flour out. All right, so we're going to use 1 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. Now, sometimes a recipe will say use sifted flour. Sometimes a recipe will say sift flour. This recipe says we're going to sift all our dry ingredients together because it matters how you measure it, if it's been sifted or not. So there's my 1 cup, and I need 3/4 of a cup. So I have this nifty set of Tupperware tools, and there's a 3/4 cup measure. But I'm not going to use that because back home in the classroom, we don't have 3/4 measuring cups. We have only 1/4 measuring cups. Excuse me there, cameraman. So here's my 1/4 cup, and I need 3/4 cups. So that's going to be 3 1/4 cups, or 3/4 cups. People have a little trouble with that math. That's all right, we're here to learn. So there's 1/4, 2/4. This method we're using for making the cake portion is called the creaming method and there's 3/4. Because we are creaming our butter and sugar, or our fat and sugar together to start. Next, we're going to put some other dry ingredients in there. We're going to put 3/4 teaspoon of baking powder. So again, we don't have a 3/4 teaspoon, but we do have 1/4. So this is baking powder, not baking soda. This contains an acid and a base. And once it's wet, it will give leavening to our cake. Leavening is what makes it rise. So we're going to use 3/4 of a teaspoon of this. 1, 2, and 3. This stuff does not last forever. Because there's moisture in the air, because there are acids and bases in here, it can react over time. So after a certain amount of time, it's no longer good. That's why I put a date on top of mine. 9/23/19, so I know when I opened it. Because the moisture in the air will cause it to react. Okay, so there's our baking powder. Now we're going to use baking soda as well. 3/4 teaspoon of baking soda. Again, I've got baking powder on my spoon, so I want to wipe that off. I don't want baking powder in my baking soda. Baking soda is just a base, and it reacts with the buttermilk of this recipe to give leavening. 1. Sometimes recipes take both, sometimes they take one or the other. 2, and 3. Okay. Let's see. Cocoa. We need 1/3 cup of cocoa powder. Now, there's 2 kinds of cocoa powder. There's regular cocoa, and there's something called Dutch cocoa, which is a little bit different. Cocoa tends to be a little bit acidic. And Dutch cocoa a chemical's been added to make it not so acidic, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, many recipes you can interchange. However, I do not like to interchange them because the results are slightly different. Dutch cocoa will have a much darker color, more close to the color of this. The regular cocoa is a sort of a light brown. And we're going to use a third cup of this. So here's a third cup. And when I open my cocoa powder, cut halfway through the lid so that I could have a little scraper inside of it to make my measurement accurate. So there we go. There's the third cup cocoa powder. All right. We have sifted flour, baking powder, baking soda, and cocoa in a medium bowl. Now sifting, if you remember, breaks up the clumps. So things like flour, powdered sugar, and cocoa, when they're shipped and packed, they tend to clump up. So the sifter sends it through a screen so that it's not going to clump up. Sometimes it's a problem, sometimes it's not. That's why some recipes say to sift, others do not. All right, from here we're going to beat a third of our flour mixture and half of the buttermilk into the egg mixture. Now, I don't have any buttermilk, so I'm going to make some buttermilk. Now, the way we make buttermilk is we use a tablespoon of lemon juice and add enough milk to make a cup, which would be 15 tablespoons. So let's do that to make a cup. So here's a tablespoon of lemon juice, and then enough milk to go to a cup. But we don't need a cup. We need 1 1/4 cup of buttermilk. So to do that, we need to figure out how much 1/4 of a tablespoon is. So 1/4 tablespoon is 3 teaspoons. So a fourth of this is a fourth of this. 3 divided by 4 is 3/4 teaspoons. So we're going to do this. Now I'm not going to measure over that, because if I spill, it's going to mess everything up. So here's 1, 2. Obviously it's easier just to have 1 1/4 cup of buttermilk. You could also use sour cream or unflavored yogurt. But I got this milk I need to get rid of. See, I spilled. It's a good thing I didn't do it over there. I'll throw off my measurements. I got this milk I need to get rid of, so I'm using it. All right. And we're going to go up to 1 1/4. All righty. Okay, so beat a third cup of, I'm sorry, not a third cup, 1/3 of the flour mixture, half of the buttermilk into the egg mixture. Repeat, ending with the flour, blend until well incorporated. So I'm going to give that a quick mix. So I'm going to start with my dry ingredients, then with my liquid, and we're going to alternate 1/3 of my dry ingredients at a time, starting with the dry ingredients and ending with the dry ingredients. I'd say that's about 1/3. I'm going to give my buttermilk a quick mix up. Do about half of this. Let that mix in a little bit. Oh, turn it down, turn it down. Cameraman did not want to take a cocoa bath today. The rest of my buttermilk goes in next. Whenever making a cake, they always say, start with your dry ingredient, end with your dry ingredient, and do it in 3 equal portions. I'm going to scrape down my sides to make sure we don't have any unmixed in sections. Even though I got the rubber scraper on the side of my beater blade, it's not 100%. We don't want to mix it too much because mixing develops gluten. We don't want to mix it too little because we need some gluten. It's going to be thoroughly mixed, but not over mixed. So scrape down your sides. Get all that dry mix mixed in. All that you can, not the stuff that's on the countertop, obviously. Alright. Blend until well incorporated. Step 4. For the flan, in a blender, combine evaporated milk, condensed milk, cream cheese, eggs, and vanilla. Put away my eggs. Forgot that we had eggs twice. So here's my blender. And of course it's disassembled because I always store my blender disassembled so we don't have mold growing in the nooks and crannies. Start with a jar. This is a rubber gasket. Prevents it from leaking. Rubber gasket goes next. It's kind of dry. It needs to be replaced. Blade assembly. And then the nut. Remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Put it on there firm. All right, so in here, we're going to combine our evaporated milk. This is evaporated milk. It's got 1/3 of the water removed. Comes in a can. I keep it in my pantry all the time because I normally don't have milk on hand in the refrigerator because I don't drink it, and neither does my wife. And by having this in the pantry, I always have access to milk for cooking, making mashed potatoes or mac and cheese or something like that. It's not sweet. And this is a 12-ounce can. It's interesting to note that, let's do this. I have 2 cans here. I'm going to rinse them off. Because whatever's on top of the can goes inside the can. And I have no idea where these cans have been. Well, I have some idea. They were at Stater Brothers, but with those Staters employees, you never know what they're going to do inside the warehouse. So if we're going to use a full can of evaporated milk, this is a can opener. I put a hole in each side so that as the evaporated milk is coming out, the air is going in. Now, you'll notice that we have two cans here. One is 12 ounces, 12 fluid ounces, and one is 14 ounces. It also says 12 fluid ounces, 354 milliliters. That's a measurement of how much liquid there is if we were to measure it in a measuring cup. This says net weight 14 ounces. The word ounce is used for both of them, but this means how many ounces on the scale. This is dry weight ounces. So, we're going to turn this on. This is going to weigh something more than 14 ounces, plus the weight of the can. Look at that. It weighs nothing. Let's try this again. Something's wrong with my scale. All right. So 15.7 ounces. So I'm going to guess that the weight of the can is about 1.7 ounces. This one here, the can weighs about 1.8 ounces. But this is not concerning the weight of the can. This is just, if I were to pour it in a measuring cup, it would be 12 full ounces, which is roughly 24 tablespoons. Alrighty, so now I'm gonna, because this is sweetened, it's got a lot of sugar in it. It contains, if you look at the ingredients, milk and sugar. Also, some of the water's been removed, but sugar's been added. This is only used for dessert. You don't want to use this for mashed potatoes or for mac and cheese. Because it's so thick, you can't pour it out of the can like you can with the evaporated milk. It'll take the entire lid off. And I'm going to use my rubber spatula here. I want to get as much out of this can as we can. Because we paid for it, might as well use it. Okay, I know you didn't want to watch me scraping the cake batter off the beater blade, but it's a good idea to do that because it's got to come off the beater blade eventually. Might as well come off here instead of in the sink when you're doing dishes. So we are going to scoop all the cake batter into the prepared butt pan, spreading evenly. I'm going to get every bit of cake batter out of this mixing bowl because it's got to come out. Might as well come out in the cake instead of down the drain. Don't be afraid to push hard on the side of the bowl with your rubber spatula. I use another rubber spatula to clean off my first rubber spatula. This looks good. Wish you could smell it. It smells good too. Now, just before I started to make this, I looked at the picture and I noticed the flan was on the other side of the batter. And I thought, what? Are there some problem? Is there some problem with the directions? No, at the bottom of the recipe it says cook's note. These two items are going to switch place when they're cooking. I'm just going to wipe my hands. Paper towel. So I've scooped the cake batter into the prepared bundt pan and spread evenly. Slowly pour the flan mixture. Just want to make sure there's no clumps in here. Seems good. Over the top. I poured a little too fast. I can see why they said slow poorly. No, not slow poorly. Pour slowly. I can see why they say that, because when you pour fast, the liquid digs a hole in the cake batter. Okay. We have covered, let's see, slowly poured the flan mixture over the cake batter. Now we're going to cover with foil and add an inch of water into the roasting pan. I don't want a lot of extra foil because the water's going to get caught up in it. So I'm going to cut some away. Maybe I'll be sorry. But it's been my experience that when you have a water bath, there's a lot of foil. The two don't always mix. So I'm going to cut away. And I'm going to add about an inch of water. This will keep the egg from cooking too fast. Water only goes up to 212 degrees before it turns to steam. So it's a way of keeping the bottom portion of the pan cooler, even though the oven's going to be at 350 degrees. So if I get the cameraman to open that oven, remember, as soon as you put anything in the oven, you want to set your timer immediately before you do anything else. Set that at 1 hour. And then we'll come back after an hour. All right, the timer says it's done. What I didn't show you is the timer went off at an hour and it was still liquid in the middle. So I took the foil off the top and put it back in for 10 minutes. It still wasn't done. Then I added 3 more. So right now, I think it's probably done. I didn't think it would hurt to go 10 or 15 minutes without the foil on top. But I got my toothpick here. And go ahead and put this on out of the oven so I don't burn myself. got some cake stuck to it, but I think it's dry cake. It's not like it's liquid. I think we're good. So we're going to let that cool and check back in a few minutes. And it's cooled for just over an hour, and we're going to try and turn it out onto a pan. I'm going to do a little bit of loosening from the sides, just in case. I don't want it to get stuck. And like I said, I haven't made this before, so I don't know how it's going to turn out. All right, put a plate of some sort on top, hold it firmly, and then flip upside down. Hopefully, whoa, that's pretty good. Now we're going to drizzle this over the top. I got more cajeta. If it's not sweet enough, we can put that. And garnished with pecans. And there it is. All right, let me know if you make this at home yourself. Let me know how it turns out.